could ever dream of. It was quite interesting because I know I did a video on like an evil or bad surgeon, a nurse, and now we're talking about a therapist. You know, it really is scary when you hear stories about people in positions where you should feel the most comfortable being vulnerable, and when that is exploited or like you're just not safe. It's terrifying. But okay, let's get into the story. So today we are talking about Marty. Now, I came across this a while ago, and I don't know why. I must have forgot to put it in my like ideas or whatever for videos. And Marty got into the situation with a therapist that his problems didn't just stay in the office. His problem actually became his therapist that took over his entire life. And this is the first time that I kind of felt so bad. I doing the research, I just laughed during the entire thing, even though this is not funny. But when I tell you, like, you'll understand. But poor Marty. There's a really good lesson in this as well. So let's begin. So we are going back to 1981, and at this time, Marty is 38 years old. Now there was a TV show done with the Will Ferrellis, one of my favorite actors of all time, Will Ferrell, and I forget who else is in it with him. 1981, our guy is 38 years old, and he is in New York. Now, there's a lot of things going on in his life, a lot of pressures that he's feeling that, you know, makes him feel overwhelmed. He is Jewish, and he's very close to his rabbi. And so the rabbi just says, hey, I know this therapist, and he did it with the best of intentions. But he said, hey, there's this therapist that you should go to. He's really great in Manhattan. So Marty goes into his office, and he just sits down, and when he sees the guy, he's like, you know, in shorts, this kind of he has this open collar shirt, very relaxed style, handsome dude, round face, curly hair, and so he kind of feels a bit more relaxed, not like stuffy or whatever, and he kind of opens up to him about what's been going on. The first and most important thing is that he's overwhelmed with a lot of new responsibilities because his father had just died recently, and his father you promised that you would take me on a Mexican trip, remember? And Marty's like bewildered. He's like, oh, we haven't even spoken, we're not even together. And now I feel pressured to take you on a Mexican trip where we're broken up. Now the thing is, Marty needed help because Marty was the kind of guy who was a severe people pleaser. People knew that if you just push him a little bit, he'll cave in, which is something that he didn't like, but he felt very powerless too. So he has a lot of things going on. And so does Dr. Isaac Herschkopf is the solid rock that Marty needs. He says, you know what? Don't worry, Marty. Yes, there's a lot of things going on right now, but I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna take care of this for you. And so this is so reassuring to a guy who now, because his father's gone, has nobody to look to for advice, nobody to lean on. No safe space. And Dr. Isaac Herschkopf is that reassuring figure that he needs. He's so sure of himself, you know. And he tells Marty, you're not gonna give that girl a Mexican trip. You're not taking her anywhere, and you're not giving her any money for anything. What you're gonna do is ignore her. Okay? Never respond to her again. And so he doesn't. Now, Marty, you know, he's at work and he asks his sister, Phyllis, to come on and work for the family company because Marty's like, you know, this is our inheritance. Yes, Dad left this company for me to be the CEO of. But I would like for you to come and work with me. His sister Phyllis, she was living up north, I think it's Boston area, if I'm correct, and she had just recently gotten a divorce, and she has two kids, two small kids at this time, or younger kids, I think they were like 12 and 10 years old, and she's living in New York, and she's like, you know what, fine, I'll come and work for the company. I think it would be a great deal for me. And so they begin to work together, and at first everything was fine, and you know, but they were still kind of having their little rift because they were trying to divvy up the dad's real estate, his estate, his money, and everything like this. So Phyllis, she was seeking a therapist as well to guide her through all of her emotions and thoughts. And so Marty is like, I know a guy, Dr. Isaac Herschkopf. And so Phyllis, you know, she goes to see Dr. Herschkopf, and you know, things seem to be, well, she was pretty impressed with how he spoke and his insights, but then it dawned on her, like, it's probably not the best idea to have the same therapist as my brother. There's a conflict of interest. He's going to be telling his therapist about me. I'm going to be telling the therapist about him. He cannot possibly give an unbiased or, you know, opinion. He's just like, it's not going to be good to get the same person. Like, what is this? So she told the therapist, Herschkopf, that she no longer wanted to see him as a patient and that she would be ending their relationship. And that's it. Now, this is when things start to get a bit dicey between the two. Marty starts to really observe the way that Phyllis is conducting herself around the office, and he's seeing her joke around and joke around with one of the coworkers, and it pisses him off. And he sees her like chatting on the phone, and he's telling these different observations to Herschkopf she would be a little bit late, he would like berate her in the taxi cab, like, our driver had to wait for you. You should have been here at this time. And she's like, you know what? You got this. I will find my own way to the office. I have kids. I can't just leave like you can at whatever time. You know, it is what it is. And then Marty literally told her, I'm cutting your salary. Yeah. I think he shaved about $5,000 off of her salary. But as we know, this is not normally how Marty would act. And Marty says that Dr. Herschkopf told him, listen, I'm giving you great advice here. It's obviously working. Now, if I give you advice and you don't implement it, don't come back to me complaining or repeating the same problem. So now Marty was stuck between a rock and his therapist. And he felt like he had to do what the therapist told him. Because Marty just wants someone to just guide him. He just needs guidance. And he just falls into it like a putty. Now, Marty at this point wants to redo his bar mitzvah. He did it when he was a teenager. But the therapist told him, this is your rebirth. This is your new life. It's time to do another bar mitzvah. And so Phyllis was really good at Hebrew calligraphy. He wanted Phyllis to help him with his drawer readings and to write the invitations for his bar mitzvah. And Phyllis is like, what? I have this position at work. I have my 2 kids. I have other things to do. I don't have time to dedicate to helping you redo your bar mitzvah and sending out invitations. Those things take time. And so this was just kind of a build-up on Marty of things that he didn't like about his sister. So Marty actually does his bar mitzvah, and he tells Phyllis, hey, did you get the invitation? And Phyllis is like, no, it must have gotten lost in the mail. He's like, no, it didn't. I didn't invite you. You know why? Because everyone that I know, they don't know that I have a sister and a nephew and a niece. So I couldn't have you show up. I would have seemed like I was a crazy person. And so this basically solidified that rift between them. And she left the company. Marty, continued about his business. But Phyllis, she says that there was something going on between him and his therapist because she knows her brother. And she would see that when Marty would be talking to a client on the phone, a client that he had a difficult time with. Maybe they were asking for too much or something, or unhappy, didn't know how to not cave in and stand up for himself. He would literally put them on hold or say, okay, fine, I will call you back and give you an answer. And he would pick up the phone and immediately call his therapist, Herschkopf, and Herschkopf would tell him exactly what to say. And then Marty would call back that client and be really rude to them. And, anyways, so to get his attention, she kind of went out the way. And they had this safety deposit box, I think that's what it's called at the bank. And in it, hold on. Oh, in it was the mother's diamond bracelets that were worth a lot of money. And they also had an offshore Swiss bank account with a couple $1 million in it. And so basically, to sum it all up, Phyllis went to the bank and she took out the diamond. She knew that this would get Marty's attention, knowing that their mother's bracelets were missing. She also went to Switzerland and took out the money from the bank account and transferred it over into a personal bank account. And she said, this is the only way I'm going to get my brother's attention. And then she went to his apartment when she knew that he wasn't there. She left a note saying exactly what she did and for him to contact her. So when Marty gets back, he's like livid. He's like, oh my goodness, this woman, another thing. he's just livid. And so he immediately calls you his therapist. And the therapist is like, you see, these people, they only want money from you. They're only taking advantage of you. Look at what your ex did. She came back after 3 months being broken up, demanding that you take her on that trip you promised her. Now your sister is literally stealing money from you. This is all that they want for you, Marty. I'm protecting you. You need to cut your sister off. And so that's exactly what he did. But he did it in the way that he did it was really disturbing. So her daughter is in school, and the principal calls her to the office. You know, as a 13-year-old girl, you're like, oh, what did I do? Is everything okay? Like, you're a little bit, nervous. And the principal's like, you didn't do anything, just here's a letter, a note. There was a note that was hand-delivered to this school. And so she goes and opens up the letter, and in it is a letter from Marty. And Marty is saying, I love you very much. Your mother has done something, though, that has betrayed my trust. She stole from me, and because your mother stole from me, I now have to not only cut her off, but I also have to cut you off. I am no longer having you as the beneficiary of my will. I am taking you out of it, you and your brother. Basically for the sins of your mother. I love you. I wish you the best. Love, Uncle Marty. And basically saying, I'm never gonna see you again, never gonna talk to you again, and you're not gonna get anything from me. And she's 13, she had no idea the repercussions of this. She had no idea what that meant, but she knew that it was a big deal. And so she calls her mother, and when Phyllis finds this out, oh my goodness, she is angry. Like, how dare you send a letter like this to a 13-year-old girl at her school? And so, that's the end of their relationship. Okay, so this is when the therapist and patient line gets really, really blurred. And that's an understatement for what I'm about to tell you. So now, now Dr. Isaac Herschkopf is telling him, listen, you are a wealthy man. You have this really great company. But what if something happens to you, Marty? If you die, your property, your money, everything you worked so hard for, it's gonna go where? To the state. You can't let that happen. So how about this? How about this? Let's set up a foundation called the Yaron Foundation, Y-A-R-O-N Foundation. And you're going to leave your properties and your money there, and this foundation is going to donate to different causes, right? And so basically he had this lawyer already prepared. Isaac Herschkopf already had this lawyer prepared, and someone that he knew from the synagogue, I think. And so basically Marty writes up this, he creates the foundation and writes up a will for the foundation, saying that everything, if something happens to me, it will go to Dr. Isaac Herschkopf, and if something happens to him, it'll go to his wife, and if something happens to her, it'll go to their kids. And now this sounds wild, but the thing is that Marty really looked at him as his everything, almost as a savior, as somebody who came into his life and saved him when he was drowning. Oh my god, when he was drowning. So he didn't think that this was inappropriate in any way, and he had no one to go and get advice from. The only person who he can get advice from was a therapist, and this was the right thing to do. Of course, it makes sense. Of course, I don't want to leave everything to the state. And so here we go. There's this foundation. So now see your business, because Marty spends a lot of time talking to him about the clients that he gets, and you know how he feels a bit pressured from the clients and dealing with everybody. So Isaac Herschkopf is like, okay, let me come and see the place. And so now there's a guy, I'm going to introduce him, named Bruce. Bruce is someone who works very closely with Marty at their business, Associated Fabrics. He's like a family friend. He knows, the relationship between Marty and Phyllis. He saw everything play out. He's someone who really supports Marty, who has his back, and really wants the business to do well. So he's a great person that Marty has working with him. He trusts him a lot. And so now Bruce is there working, and he sees this guy come in with Marty one day. He thinks nothing of it, but the guy kind of keeps coming back. He's like looking around, he's taking notes, and so he thinks, okay, maybe it's a business consultant, but he doesn't ask any questions. And one day Bruce gets into a really heated fight with somebody, almost to the point of blows. And Marty and this business consultant, they come into the room, and Marty, he goes to take the guy away that Bruce was almost, about to punch or get into a physical altercation with, and the business consultant stays with Bruce. Come to find out, that guy that Bruce was fighting with was Bruce's own uncle. And he basically told the guy, like, the next time when I'm here, you better knock on that door, we're gonna have problems, something like this. I don't know, they had some issues. Anyways, so the business consultant introduces himself as Isaac Stevens, and he starts to give Marty some interesting advice about, listen, because they were kind of redoing the office space, and he was saying that your door, when it opens, it needs to open up to the inside. A boss's door does not open up from the outside. Did you know this, guys? And when Marty was saying this, he was like, did you know that? Like, I don't know who thought about that, but the business consultant was saying that when you walk into the boss's office, it's you that's being invited in. It's not you open the door towards you. That's kind of weak on the boss's end, something like this, like a psychological thing. And Bruce is like, what are you talking about? Like, who cares about how the door swings open? Just put a door in, Mr. Stevens starts making changes to the company and giving people actual titles, because it was like a mom and pop shop, but he starts to give business titles to people. Bruce now becomes the director of sales. Bruce's uncle becomes the director of operations. There's this guy that they bring on called Marshall Feldhammer. Now Marshall Feldhammer is someone you don't want to mess with, okay? Everybody knew Associated Fabrics as the mom and pop shop, as I said, and they had really loyal customers for many, many years who worked with Marty's father. Now they had this guy, Colin, and he wanted a fee to be waived, and normally Marty would be like, okay, fine, but he didn't really want to do it, and I guess at a certain point he felt taken advantage of, right? And so he told the guy no in an email. And so the guy, he writes back, and he's so heartfelt, literally pulling on every heartstring. And it's like, Marty, I know that you're a good guy. I know that you want to be a good guy. I knew your father. I worked with your father. Your father would have never not waived that fee. This is not how your father would have treated me. And he brought up Judaism and God, and just harping on how good of a person he is. was through Marshall Feldhammer, who was literally like a hammer, like, this is the law, and also Norman Harowitz, who were the new people who took over Associated Fabrics. So when people would be used to getting discounts or having a fee waived or something wrong with the fabric, one time I think they got a they got, some client was, I don't know, maybe trying to get a replacement for the fabric that they got, something like this, and Michael Feldhammer literally sent back this whole typed up email, like, you had to be really good at numbers, like, to understand this, because he would put a bunch of different measurements and calculations and I don't know, just a bunch of stuff that nobody was used to reading just to describe the dragging damage of a fabric. So people knew that they were dealing with somebody else and they couldn't really play around and, you know, get the things that they were normally used to getting from Marty. But come to find out, nobody actually ever saw Michael Feldhammer in person because Michael Feldhammer didn't exist. Neither did Norman Harowitz. These were fake identities created by Marty and his business consultant, Isaac Stevens. Isaac Stevens is Isaac Herschkopf, his therapist. So in order to deal with these customers and clientele, they would put forth these fake identities. The craziest thing here is that Isaac Herschkoph's therapist, he gave himself the title as president of Associated Fabrics, of Marty's company. Literally, Marty had stationery made for him with Isaac Stevens as the name president of Associated Fabrics. When you call on the phone as a customer, you can press 1 and talk to this person, director of sales. Dial 2 for the director of operations, customer service, and then you have the number for the president of Associated Fabrics. And Isaac Herschkopf, Marty's therapist, loved the title of president of this international fabric company. Now, Marty was not a flashy guy, okay? For the 20 years he drove, he had like the same kind of normal Toyota car or whatever. He was a wealthy dude, but he never showed it off in his clothing. Like, you would never think that he was rich. But the thing is that with Isaac Herschkopf, when it was his birthday, for example, because now we're about 2 years in, just to give you an idea of their relationship. When it was his birthday, he expected a gift from Marty. He's like, Marty, it's my birthday. And so they would go down to Fifth Avenue to like this sneaker shop, and he would have Marty buy him the pair of sneakers that he wanted to have. Isaac Herschkopf, the therapist, had this kind of a beard going on, and Marty grew out a beard to look like him. Okay, so anyways, they start this Your Own fund, right? Marty, his beginning contribution to the fund is $100,000, and his therapist contribution is $5,000. And it was so crazy looking back. Well, hold on, before I do that. So basically they would donate to different foundations, but it wouldn't be Marty doing it. It would be Isaac Herschkopf donating, but Marty would see like the bank statements to see where this money was going. But it was just Marty basically spending as he wanted to, because it wasn't really his money. A little bit was, but come on, 100,000 to 5,000, you can see the difference in the contribution amount. was just to say that they donated, even though it was a measly $3. So, besides his apartment in Manhattan, Marty also had a house in Southampton. It was a pretty modest house. He got it for about $160,000, but this is back in like the 70s, right? So, I mean, now would be like what? But it was worth like $1 million something back then. So he had this house in the Southamptons, and Isaac and his wife, I think her name was Becky, would come along with them, and Isaac actually had 2 kids, and they would celebrate the kids' birthdays there at the Southampton house. Becky loved this place, obviously, because it's the Hamptons. It's like where you want to be, right? Where all the cool people go with money. And Becky loved going out there, and so because Marty wasn't close to his family anymore, Isaac said, "You know what, Marty? Don't think of us as guests. We are family. My family is now your family." And this was so comforting to Marty, because now he felt like he kind of belonged to a group, you know, a family. And so he would buy Isaac's daughters gifts, because they became like his new nieces, because he no longer had his niece and nephew. He got them each $2,000 computers. I say computers because it was back then, you didn't have the laptops you do now. He got them each $2,000 computers. And he even, when Marty and his wife were, when Isaac and his wife were busy, Marty would be like the parent that will go to like a parent-teacher meeting or something at the school if that was ever needed. And so now we kind of really see how their relationship dynamic is changing, right? So now, because Isaac and Becky love going to the Hamptons, they're up there one day and they see that the house behind Marty's house is for sale, and it's a bigger house. This house has a tennis court, has a swimming pool, the things that Marty doesn't actually do. But Isaac says, "You should buy that house, Marty, because this is going to help you with your social circle and whatever." So he buys the house. They paid $450,000 for this house, and so they get the house, and when they get in, Isaac is like, "You know what, me and Becky, we will take the master bedroom. In fact, we'll take this wing of the house. You can have that room back there, like the guest bedroom." And so Marty purchased this house for $500,000, and he's in the guest room. And they set up this welcome mat with the Herschkopf name on it, and Becky's kitchen as like a sign for the kitchen. And they put up all of their family photos, not including Marty. And there's a huge wall of photos with Marty next to celebrities, prominent people. No, not Marty, sorry, Isaac. So basically the walls in the house is with Isaac and his family, and Isaac with a wash them. Go wash towels. Like, Mookie. I can't. And that was basically, like, to sum up the entire relationship between him and Isaac. It's like, basically you could look at it as Marty stepping into Isaac's office and Isaac saying, "Are you ready for a change in your life?" And Marty's like, "Yes, I'm ready for a change." And he's like, "Good, grab me a soda." So, my goodness, poor Marty. So basically, but he went along with all of this because he felt like it was the right thing to do. So now, he said, "Okay, Marty, we're gonna have a party. First party, it's everybody basically that Marty knows, the rabbi, people they know from school, or whatever." He says, first party, they make it really, really fun, really extravagant. They even hire like a bus service to pick up everybody in the city, bring them out with the kids, make it a nice family day, and it goes off without a hitch. Really, really nice. But then they get through with the party, and so one day Isaac tells Marty, "You know, Becky really likes this house. I think you should leave the house to her if anything happens to you." So in his will, Marty includes that if anything were to happen to me, Becky gets this new $500,000 Hampton house. And mind you, Marty is doing fixer-uppers around the house, so it's really adding a lot of value. Yeah, so basically he like leaves the house to Becky. And so now they are planning another party, and Ike is really, really great at party planning, and this time it's nobody that Marty knows. He invites his childhood friend, Isaac's childhood friend, and his childhood friend gets this letter in the mail, this, like inviting him to this party, and it's really nicely done the way that the invitation is written out. And so when he gets there, he's like, "Oh wow, this is a beautiful home, and I see all these accomplishments. Not only has Isaac, become a psychiatrist, but now he's also a business consultant and the president of an international fabrics company. All these different things that he's accomplished. All these pictures on the wall of celebrities, and there's a lot of success in his house." But he looked at the mailbox. He said, "Why does the mailbox say Isaac Stevens? You're Isaac Herschkopf." And he's like, "Oh yeah, no, it's just because I don't really want my patients to know where I live," things like this. Coming up with excuses. So they have this, really lovely party, but also at the party, it's Isaac's patients as well. So I will actually get into his patients, but let me just say this one thing about Isaac's parties. When Isaac would do the parties at Marty's house, he would give Marty another job. And basically Marty would go to the neighbors' houses and knock on the door and say, he's like, "My boss, Isaac Stevens, is throwing a party and he would like to invite you to his house." And Marty would say this because Marty said that's exactly what Isaac told him to say. And so that's how the neighbors had no idea that this was actually Marty's house. They would see him on the grounds, like watering the grass. They thought he was a groundskeeper or something, fixing the gates, like, I don't know, just doing work around the house and inviting them to Isaac's parties. He thought that he worked for Isaac, but it was really Marty's house. Now this is 6 years in, right? Mind you, their relationship went on for 30 years like this. 30 years. So now they are 6 years in, and let me get to his other patients, because this didn't just happen to Marty. Okay, the first and most, I guess, prominent patient that we're going to talk about when it comes to this whole scenario is Judith. So Judith is one of Ike's patients. Now Judith, when she meets Ike, she is in about her late 20s, and she tells him about her very traumatic childhood with her mother. She had both her mother and her father, but specifically when she was a little girl. Yeah. When she was a little girl, she had gotten bitten by a dog, but she was so afraid to tell her mom that she got bitten by the dog because she wasn't actually allowed to touch dogs. Because the mom said that Holocaust survivors were chased by dogs. So she was never allowed to go near one, so how could she tell her mom she got bitten by one? And so she had this deep fear of dogs. And she said that Isaac really helped her get over this fear because they would visit animal shelters and they would go and see the dogs until they would actually go into like the cage area with the dogs, and she got more comfortable and felt good with the dogs. And then Marty was like, when he would go out on vacation, he told her to watch his dog for him. And she felt honored. She felt honored that he walked her through this intense fear and now entrusted her with his own dog. But the biggest thing in her life was her mom. Isaac was overall pushing her to cut off contact with her mom, basically letting the evil go, as he put it. Her daughter was having her bar mitzvah come up, and normally you're supposed to invite everybody in the family, especially the grandparents, right? That's very important. But I told her, don't invite them. No. And when her family found out that she was inviting her parents, they saw that as like a big no-no, and they distanced themselves from her. And so here we go, just like Marty, now she's a bit more isolated from her support system, from her family. So she had the daughter's bar mitzvah without her and didn't speak to her. But then the mom started to get sick, and the father actually reached out to Judith, letting her know about her mother's condition. And she didn't know what to do, so she turned to Isaac, because actually Judith was a married woman. But the thing is that she didn't rely on her husband the way that she relied on Dr. Isaac. And her husband was not to come in between this relationship, because Judith would always say, if something ever happened with my relationship with Dr. Isaac, I don't know how I would survive that. Like her mental health was that bad to her that she would be very unstable, and she needed Dr. Isaac to survive and to be the person that she needed to be to get on with her life. So her husband was almost afraid to even touch that dynamic. And so Dr. Isaac basically advised that she write a letter of everything your mom did to you and send it to your dad, send it to them. And so she wrote out a letter of everything that she went through, and then she put, when she dies, perhaps she will go to a place where all of the sins against her daughter would be replayed over and over again, like a hell. This is how she would pay for what she did to me. Can you imagine? How cold. And again, this is not something that Judith would normally do without the guidance of Dr. Isaac. So she sent it, and the mom did die. She never went to go see her. She never resolved anything with her in life. And she felt no remorse for her mother for a long time, but she still held on to the pain and the trauma of what happened. It didn't heal her, of course it didn't heal her. And then it was time for her mother's funeral. And Isaac said, I advise that you do not go to your mother's funeral, but felt really bad about it, but she did it, and unfortunately she lost a great friend. And and Isaac likes his clients to be isolated from everybody so that he can continue to use them in whatever way he wants to. Eventually she did leave Dr. Isaac and her sessions with him and ended that relationship. But before that, she was invited to his parties. Now, I feel like being invited to my therapist's personal Also Bruce saw a change in Marty, because at first he saw him have a physical subservience towards Isaac. He saw him like literally weaken himself physically in front of Isaac. At times he saw how he changed, but now he saw a different change coming in, where Marty was becoming more confident, more independent, now that he was alone, and really coming back to being a good boss, and giving a good direction and leadership pretty much, and dealing with clients in a really good way. They were coming back to their roots, and Bruce was really happy to see this, but also a bit like, hey buddy, because he got used to making decisions on his own, but now whatever, it's his company, right? So anyhow, Marty had an operation, and it put him in the hospital for some time. And this is not the first time that he had an operation, but the first time he had an operation, Isaac was in the same hospital because his wife was giving birth to their child. And so Isaac came to see him. And he thought about it. Now maybe it's out of convenience when he looks back, because he was in the same hospital. How could he not go to see him? But this time, when he was in the hospital for the operation, he expected for Isaac to call him, because Isaac knew that he was the only person that he had. And there was no call on the day after that. And here, Marty gets his feelings are hurt. He's like, he knows I have nobody else. How could he do this to me? And so, this is when he decides it's the last straw, because he never called him to check on him. So, when Marty gets out the hospital, he writes a letter to the doctor, to the therapist, and says, you know what? I'm cutting down our sessions to one time a month, an hour. And if you're not available, because I know you're a very busy man, that's okay with me. And he sends him this letter. And he takes him off of all of the wills. He takes him off of the foundation. He takes him out of everything. And when he looked into it, he actually saw that some of the foundation money actually went to Isaac. He basically took that money that wasn't meant to be for him and paid himself with it. And you know, Dr. Isaac, he sent him back a letter basically saying, you don't know what you're doing, like, you can't handle this, people are gonna take advantage of you, and you're passive aggressive, they won't know how to deal with you, you're gonna need me. And Marty was like, BS, and he actually got this tactic from Dr. Isaac Herschkopf, where when somebody tries to reel you back in, you don't respond. So guess what he did? He didn't respond. And so we knew that their relationship was over. And so now you have Becky calling like, hey, can we get our stuff back? And so he packs up all their clothes, sends it back to him, literally like a breakup. And Dr. says, "Hi, can you come out to the Hamptons?" And she's like, "Wait a second. After everything we've been through, I haven't talked to you or seen you in 25 years. I don't know what you're planning on doing. Like, you were unhinged. I'm not going out to the Hamptons by myself with you." So they met up. They were going to go to church together, the synagogue together. But they went out to a cafe, and Marty began to kind of tell her the relationship that he had with the doctor, and the strain and how they separated. And he brought up the fact that, like, why you took the money at the Swiss account and stole mom's stuff from the safety deposit box. You were after my money. What would you do that for? And she was like, "No, I just wanted your attention. I just wanted you to talk to me because you wouldn't talk to me. You were so engrossed with that doctor." And Marty was like so bewildered and so shocked. He's like, "Oh my goodness, my sister loved me and just wanted to talk to me." So anyways, after that meeting, they went to the synagogue, and he saw his niece again after 20-something years. She grew up, she got married, had kids. The nephew was more willing to take him back because the nephew didn't get the letter. He didn't receive the letter. It was really personal for the niece. And, you know, she was just basically saying, like, "I'm not inviting you to all my family functions now that you're back. I mean, I don't really know you. About the last time I saw you, I was like 13. So we can't just, I don't have that trusting thing because if I bring you back, are you gonna do this again?" But, it didn't take long for Marty and his sister Phyllis to get really, really close again, basically catching up on the past 30 years. And, Phyllis actually went to the Hamptons to help Marty clean out all that crap and put it in the basement from Isaac's time there, because she's like, "This is your house. If you want to keep this for records or for whatever to validate the story that you went through, that's fine, but it doesn't need to be on display. Take his name off the mailbox." So thank goodness Marty finally got out of that horrible, toxic patient-therapist relationship. The thing is, it's that well, Isaac also says this too, that he didn't actually hold a gun to Marty's head and force him to do anything. This was actually Marty's doing as well. He went along with it, which is what I said with Marty taking personal responsibility. He did go along with it, but there is a certain abuse in a way, right? This is not right. That was a vulnerable man coming to you in your position as a therapist. He abused his position of power in that way. Thank goodness Marty is out and enjoying his Hamptons home, and his business is thriving. And he has a good support system with his family now. And I think he even said, like, he's lucky that even after all that time he was able to reconnect with his sister, who was still very much open to having a relationship with him and really accepting him back, especially after she found out why all this happened. Anyways, thank you guys so much. This video has gone on way too long, and I can't wait to see you in my next one. Peace.